All right, guys, so I figured I'd start the video out with some first-person shooting. This is something I'm starting to do, and it's kind of exciting to actually do it this way. Then you can see all my idiosyncrasies when I shoot. But what you can see here is really the first 20 rounds that I shot. And the APX started off very well, right off the bat. Fantastic handgun. It shoots very naturally. Now, interestingly enough, one of the things that I did notice when I was shooting the handgun for the first time, it did take a little time to get used to. I don't know if it was the trigger or actually the grip angle, but my groupings weren't exactly perfect or very consistent in the beginning. As the day kind of went along, it started getting better and better. So the APX is a fine shooting handgun, guys. Again, I apologize for some of the camera work here, but I was transitioning from wearing the camera on my hat to putting it down on the the little shelf in front of me. But as you can see, the groups are okay, not perfect, but they're okay, and they're about the size of my fist. All right, guys, and we're back to the table. So again, you see the Beretta APX in its full-size glory. Now, in regards to this handgun, one of the things that I want to do is, before I get into anything, I do want to show you some basics. So what I am going to do is I'm going to show you a little pop-up chart right there. And what you're going to notice is that, again, this is a striker-fired handgun, if you didn't know that by now. It measures out to be about 4¼ inches on the barrel and the slide, really. And, it's a nice long barrel. I think it does, obviously, or it will at least help some accuracy in regards to that. You can debate whether or not that's true. Again, it is available in 9mm or 40 Smith & Wesson. Depends on what what you like the best. Me, I'm more of a 9mm guy. Don't know if they're ever going to offer this in a 45, but that would be kind of interesting. Although I don't necessarily know if they'd have to make this a little bit thicker just to be able to get the tolerances up for a 45. Again, that's something engineers would know. I wouldn't. Again, if you live in a free state, you can get this in a 17-round magazine for the 9mm. Unfortunately, because I don't live in a free state, I am relegated to 10 rounds. And of course, if you have this 40 Smith & Wesson, you're looking at 15 rounds, which is actually a pretty good amount of capacity. And I think that's something that a lot of people should really be looking at when they buy these handguns. The overall height is 5.6 inches, overall length 7.55 inches for both. And again, the overall width for both is 1.3 inches. So again, some people may say this is a very thick gun. I don't know, guys. It's less than 2 inches thick. I don't really think that's a big problem. I think most of obviously the thickness comes from the slide, because the grip is fairly slim. As a matter of fact, a lot of people made comments that this thing looked like a high point, or it looked imbalanced or unbalanced because of the fact that you have a really thin grip but a very thick slide. I will tell you, just basically putting it in your hand and shooting it for a couple hundred rounds, it'll probably change your mind because it just runs really well. Now, the overall weight is 28.24 ounces for the 9mm and 28.92 ounces. So you gain a couple of tenths, however you want to say that, of a couple of ounces there. So what, 7/10 of an ounce? So it's really not that bad. And again, if I make a mathematical error, that's okay, guys. Sue me, not a mathematician. Now, in regards to the overall function of the handgun, one of the things that I noticed was when I was shooting this gun, the ability to run this trigger actually is very good. And a lot of the things that I noticed also was the minimal recoil that you're feeling. So, when you look at this handgun, one of the things that I think makes it a big treat to shoot is just the fact that you're really showing or really feeling little recoil. And what I'm going to do is right about there, I'm going to show you a video. Hopefully it comes in well. Again, I'm really pushing the limits of my editing abilities here, guys. But I am going to show you just the recoil. I'm going to slow it down for you. And one of the things that I noticed when I was shooting this gun was that the recoil impulse, and again, it's not anything to really necessarily concern yourself about because it is a 9mm, but overall the impulse is very light. As a matter of fact, I would say this is one of the most I won't say the most flat shooting gun I've ever owned. I think that really goes to the Steyr, and really honestly this bad boy right here, the M&P 2.0. But I think overall the way this gun is able to handle itself when it's shooting is just really good. You're able to keep it really straight on impact where you want to shoot it. And I really think that has a lot to do just with the slide weight. The fact that, when you're holding the gun, you have a pretty deep undercut, which sits pretty good in your hand. And again, this beaver tail, which of course is going to be, really, I guess you can say, jammed into the meat of your hand. So, I mean, it really does a good job of holding itself in place. Now, interestingly enough, I was watching a video the other day on the APX, and somebody who I'm not going to name, who's a much bigger channel than I am, was saying that this gun was very snappy. And I don't understand where they got that from. They were saying that because it has such a deep undercut, it actually caused the gun to be more snappy than other guns. I've never heard that, guys. Honestly, the deeper that undercut and the way this kind of sits on top of your hand, the recoil management is much better and much more superior than some other guns out there on the market. Again, that's why I think CZ went with something like this as well. And obviously Steyr has that as well. So I think that is, I don't know if I necessarily believe that this is a snappier handgun. Now, overall, what did I think about the gun? Well, one of the things I did notice was the trigger. Now, the trigger is a good trigger. It is not the best trigger in the world. It isn't going to make you say, man, that's the best trigger. But I will tell you that the trigger is fairly good. Now, I've been measuring this trigger out before and after I shot it. Before I shot it, it was in the mid sixes. After I shot it, it's still about 6 and anywhere from 6 to 6.5 pounds. And one of the things that I was a little bit, I don't want to say angry about or concerned about, because it is a good trigger. I mean, it's definitely one of the best out of the box triggers that I have found in any handgun. But one of the things that I did notice was it just felt a little bit too heavy. And what I mean by that is, you know, the trigger is very good. I mean, it's a good trigger. There's very little take up. And I think that's a benefit. I think anybody who shoots handguns would admit that the shorter take up just gives you a better feel for the trigger. Again, it's, you know, whatever you think is best for you, but I personally believe that. Now, when you get the trigger take up, and you can see that right there. As a matter of fact, let me zoom in on this a little bit. There we go. So one of the things you're going to notice in regards to the trigger is that there's very little take up, and that's a good thing. Now, the problem that I have is that even though the trigger has very little take up, it is still a substantial pull weight. Now, 6 to 6.5 pounds, some people would say it's not that heavy of a pull weight. Not to mention, this really is more for duty. It is more for duty type of guns. But, you know, at the same time, I think 6 pounds is just a little bit too heavy. I would like to have seen this trigger come in at about 5 pounds, maybe 5.5 pounds. Just shave a little bit off of that weight just to get a little bit better of a trigger pull. Now, does it really affect the function of the handgun? Not really. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to that trigger pull. I would say that the trigger feel of this, even though the shape isn't identical, it really reminds me of a SIG P320 trigger just in regards to that really short take up and then the heavier pull weight. Obviously, you know, again, people's opinions will vary, but that's my opinion on the trigger. Now, do I think it's a good trigger? Yeah, it's a really good trigger, guys. You can't go wrong with it. The shape is very nice, everything like that. Now, double tapping on the handgun was fairly good. I mean, it was, like I said, everything shot very well. It was a very smooth, straight type of handgun. In regards, what I mean by that is just every time you shoot it, the recoil is very minimal, so you're back on target. And I think that's very good, which allowed double taps to be done fairly well. So I'm going to show you a little video right now on that. All right, guys. So in this clip, what you're going to be seeing here are some double taps. And one of the things I noticed about this trigger is that it likes to run fast. And anytime you have a fast running trigger like this, it's always a lot of fun to shoot. So you can see that most of them are where they need to be, with one flyer to the top and one slightly to the bottom. All right, guys. So at the end of the day, what are my final thoughts about the Beretta APX? Honestly, if you're looking for a full-size handgun that has kind of a unique look to it, that's for sure. With a good trigger out of the box where you won't necessarily have to do any upgrades immediately or at all for that matter, I would definitely recommend this handgun. I think overall it feels really good in the hand. I don't see anything ergonomically that would make me say this is not a gun that would fit most, if not all, hands. Again, I think overall there's a lot to be really talked about in regards to the modularity of this handgun. What I'm looking forward to is potentially getting my hands on either a compact grip or a Centurion grip and dropping the slide on there at some point, whenever that's made available. Now, overall, if there were any major issues, I would definitely tell you. I'm happy to say I didn't have anything. And one of the things that I did notice that for me as a shooter with this handgun, and one thing that I need to improve on, is where I'm gripping the handgun. And what I mean is most of the time I was having trouble with the slide actually not locking if I could speak, that'd be great. Not actually locking back is what I wanted to say. And one of the things I noticed was as I was actually shooting the gun and I went into the gun with my support hand, I tend to ride very high, as I've said before, on the frames of these handguns. And because my thumb is, according to Koda Boy, extraordinarily long, I have a tendency to just put a little too much pressure on that thumb there, which is not allowing for that slide to lock back. So what I had to do is make some small adjustments, either dropping my thumb underneath, which really had no issue. It actually started locking back once I did that, or I had to actually ride my thumb on top of my support hand. Now, what is my preference? My preference would actually be to ride it a little bit lower underneath there. It just feels like it's more supported that way. But I mean, overall, ergonomically, it's great. Fit and finish is fantastic. The trigger's really good. The sights out of the box are fairly decent. Again, you got your 3-dot sights. Nothing necessarily to write home about in regards to how good they are. Obviously, I'd like to upgrade these sights at some point, and some point I will, maybe. But right now, if you're looking for the full-size handgun that has a lot of great features, I can't see why you would pass up on the Beretta. So I'm going to leave you with some final shooting footage. And then, again, if you guys would like to leave some comments down below, tell me what you think about the APX. Tell me if you have experience with it or not, or if you'd like to get one. And I'd love to know why that is. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day. Thumbs up if you choose to. Thumbs down if you choose to. It's all good. And as always, I hope you have a great night. Family's being good, and you guys are all doing well. And as always, freedom is never free.